Good evening, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, listeners from every corner of the unknown and known worlds. This is your host, Nicholas Black, traditionally your herald of news and current affairs. But tonight we'll be sharing 5 tales. Campfire stories that have stood the test of time, leaving brave souls clinging to their marshmallow sticks in dread. The Girl Who Stood on a Grave, The Gift of the Doll, Drive of Danger, The Hook-Handed Killer, and the classic The Black Ribbon. So gather round your virtual campfires, but don't get too cozy. The flickering flames may not be enough to keep the lurking darkness at bay. Shall we proceed?
The Girl Who Stood on a Grave.
A couple of weeks ago, some kids were at a party. There was a graveyard down the street, and they were talking about how scary it was. "Don't ever stand on a grave after dark," one of the boys said. "The person inside will grab you. He'll pull you under." "That's not true," one of the girls said. "It's just a superstition." "Well, then I'll give you $1 if you go stand on a grave," said the boy. "A grave doesn't scare me," said the girl. "I'll do it right now." The boy handed her his knife. "Stick this in the grave. Then we'll know you were there." The graveyard was filled with shadows and was as quiet as death. "There's nothing to be scared of," the girl told herself. But she was scared anyway. She picked out a grave and stood on it. Then quickly she bent over and plunged the knife into the soil and started to leave. But she couldn't get away. Something was holding her back. She tried a second time to leave, but she could not move. She was filled with terror, and she screamed, "Something has got me! Something has got me!" And she fell to the ground. When she didn't come back, the others went to look for her. They found her body sprawled across the grave. Without realizing it, she had plunged the knife through her skirt and had pinned it to the ground. It was only the knife that had held her. She had died of fright. The Drive of Danger. It was a late night, rainy, very dark. A young woman was driving home alone from work after a long, tiring day. Her 2-seater pickup truck had been driving on steadily through the rain for the last half hour, and she still had another half hour to go before she got home. As she made a turn down a fork in the road, she happened to glance down and notice her fuel gauge. "Oh no," she thought. The needle was hovering right above the empty mark. Sighing, she continued on to the left fork to the gas station that was not too far ahead. The station was almost empty. Only one other car was being filled up, an old red Nissan. The woman waved a weary hello to the driver, and he waved back with equal tiredness. Apparently, she wasn't the only one driving a long way home late tonight. After her bill had been paid and her car was burping with satisfaction at its full tank of gas, the woman climbed back into the driver's seat. She started the engine and closed the window, which had been left open for her to grab her wallet. Driving on into the pounding rain, as she pulled out of the gas station, she noticed the driver of the red Nissan leaping into his car and speeding off behind her. How odd, she thought. Maybe he got an urgent phone call. But the Nissan didn't pass her when it came up behind her. The man drove at the same pace as her, revving his engine loudly. What is going on here? The woman wondered nervously. As she put her blinker on to turn at the right fork again, the Nissan driver suddenly turned his brights on, blinding her as she tried to look in the rearview mirror. "What in the—" she gasped aloud, pressing down hard on the gas and speeding ahead. But the Nissan could keep pace and was soon behind her again. There went the driver again, flashing his brights, once for a few seconds before turning them down again. "Maybe he wants me to pull over," the woman thought nervously. "Perhaps I have an oil leak or something." But as she turned her wheel to head onto the soft shoulder on the roadside, the man revved his engine, powerfully, almost angrily. Again, he flashed the Nissan's brights, almost bumping the back of the pickup as he surged forward behind her. He wanted her to keep going. Her heart racing now, the woman pressed the gas pedal down as hard as she could and watched the shadow driver in her right side mirror. He would flash his brights every 20 seconds or so, keeping them on for a brief time before turning them off again and revving his engine furiously. On, off, vroom, vroom. The woman's fingers gripped the wheel tighter. What would he do if she tried to get away from him? Would he force her off the road? On, off, vroom, vroom. Deciding to take the chance, the woman turned her wheel suddenly and went speeding into the lane on the opposite side of the road, which was southbound instead of northbound. The Nissan driver kept his brights on for a long time as he skidded across the empty northbound and followed her. He seemed a very skilled driver, and as she headed back the way she came, the woman swerved, took shortcuts, and doubled back, trying to lose the Nissan driver. But the car remained steadfastly tailgating her, bright flashing lights blinding her every few moments. On, off. Rain drove down harder against the roof. On, off. The truck's tires squealed as the woman desperately tried to lose the Nissan under an overpass. On, off. The woman's hands pounded hard on the dashboard in terrible fear and frustration as the tears began to flow. On, off. Suddenly, a glowing sign showed itself just down the road as the woman turned a corner. It was the gas station. Nearly choking with relief, the woman's pickup whined loudly as she gunned it towards the shelter and safety of the station. Her brakes screeched as she pulled in beside a gas pump, and before the truck had even come to a full stop, she was leaping out of it and sprinting towards the door. She screamed to them to get the police on the phone, and she told them what happened. Suddenly, the gas station door burst open, a man's dark figure coming in from out of the storm. Having just finished her story over the phone to the police, the woman screamed, dropping the phone, and fled, taking refuge in the broom closet, locking herself in until the police arrived minutes later. It was only then that she came shaking from the closet and learned the truth. The driver of the red Nissan was not trying to harm her. He was trying to save her. As he had been preparing to pay his gas bill, he had seen a man run out of the bushes behind the gas station and climb into the crawl space behind the seat of the woman's truck, entering through its open window. When the woman had drove away, the Nissan driver had taken off behind her. As he was trying to tell her to pull over, he had seen a dark figure rise up behind the seat, a knife raised in his hand. Knowing that if the woman pulled over, she wouldn't have enough time to escape, the man had done all he could and flashed his brights, casting the mysterious killer in light and causing him to duck down. He had followed the woman desperately, continually flashing his brights as a man in her backseat continually tried to stab her. After the police heard the man's story, they checked the woman's truck and found, curled up in the back seat, a serial killer that had recently escaped from jail, a knife clutched in his hand. Night, Lucy fought sleep, but eventually she drifted off. Soon, the disembodied voice woke Lucy again. She wondered, could she only hear it in her head? The Gift of the Doll. On the morning of her birthday, Lucy's mother woke her up and told her a package had arrived in the mail, and it was addressed to her. The girl hurriedly unwrapped the gift and was horrified at what she found inside. It was the most disgusting old doll she had ever seen. It was completely bald, and its skin was cracked and caked in dirt. The worst thing of all, though, was its teeth. They were long, pointy, sharp, and beastly. They looked like an animal's fangs. With a shiver, she took the doll and threw it in a corner. Her mother scolded her, telling her that someone had gone to a lot of trouble to send her this antique doll. Her mother told her she had better appreciate it. Lucy tried to protest, but her mother just wouldn't listen. She forced the young girl to keep the doll. So, to put her mind at rest, Lucy stuffed the antique doll into the little cupboard under the stairs, behind a pile of shoes, where she wouldn't have to look at the ugly, evil little thing again. It was not until a few nights later, when Lucy was lying in bed, that she heard a noise. A shuffling sound, which went on for about 5 minutes. Then a brief, dragging noise, and finally a scuttling, like light footsteps walking very fast. By now, Lucy was shaking in her bed with fear, unable to move. Then, She thought she heard a faint, raspy voice whispering quietly from downstairs. Lucy always slept with the door open and the landing light on, as she was a little scared of the dark. She heard the voice say, though, "Lucy, Lucy, I'm on the first step." And then a loud scrabbling again as whatever was speaking apparently turned tail and returned to its place of hiding. Lucy was so scared that she didn't sleep a wink that night, but laid in fear until the break of dawn, when her mother got her up for school. Lucy tried to explain to her mother what had happened the night before, but was so tired that when her mother passed it off as just a dream, she began to believe it might be the case. Of course it wasn't, but you can convince yourself of anything sometimes. Still, Lucy begged her parents to let her throw the antique doll in the garbage, but they insisted that it was a present and she had to keep it. So Lucy reluctantly went back to bed, telling herself that it had only been a dream. She checked the cupboard under the stairs, but the doll was exactly where Lucy had left it. At night, Lucy fought sleep, but eventually she drifted off. Soon, the disembodied voice woke Lucy again. She wondered if she could only hear it in her head. "Lucy, Lucy, I'm on the fourth step," it said. That night, the scuffling noise came again, and luckily, the voice didn't speak to her again. Lucy was crying, and again she didn't sleep the next night. But at school the next day, Lucy told her friends about the doll, and of course, they laughed at her. Lucy could only think that if the doll was climbing 4 stairs at a time, then there was only one more night to go. Night, Lucy decided to shut her bedroom door. When her mother turned off her room light, she asked why Lucy was no longer scared of the dark. Lucy replied she was, and could her mom please leave her light on instead of the hall light? But her mother pointed out that her bedroom light was so bright it would keep her awake and said no. Lucy hesitantly agreed to just sleep without a light. She opened the bedroom curtains instead to light the room a little anyway. Just as she began to doze, she heard the noise. The voice came very clear this time. "Lucy, Lucy, I'm on the top step." In the darkness of her bedroom, Lucy heard a click, and she began to tremble with fear. She wasn't sure, but she thought she could see her bedroom door opening very, very slowly. The next morning, Lucy's parents found her body at the bottom of the stairs. They guessed that she had been on her way to the toilet during the night and in the darkness had slipped and fallen down the stairs, breaking her neck. An antique doll was found beside her body and was buried with Lucy. Everyone said what a tragedy it was. She loved that doll, said her mother. Now they can be together forever. The hook-handed killer. On a dark and moonless night in a sleepy little town, everyone seemed to be asleep and in their homes except Emily and Mark, 2 high school sweethearts. They decided to go on a late-night drive and ended up on an abandoned road known to locals as Shadow Lane. "Isn't this the place where the hook-handed killer was last seen?" Emily asked, shivering a little despite the warmth of the car. "Yeah, but those are just stories to scare kids," Mark reassured her, although he himself felt a tinge of unease. According to legend, decades ago, a man with a hook for a hand had terrorized the town, responsible for at least 10 grisly murders. He was never caught, and many believed he took refuge somewhere along Shadow Lane. They heard a tap, tap, tapping sound, soft but distinct, on the roof of the car. Startled, Emily screamed, grabbed Mark's arm, and urged him to drive back home. As soon as he turned on the ignition, though, as if on cue, the car's engine sputtered, and died. Great timing, Mark mumbled, frantically turning the ignition, but to no avail. We need to get out of here, Emily said, her voice tinged with panic. A flashlight from the glove compartment. Stay here. I'll go look for help. Don't leave me alone, Emily protested, but Mark assured her it would be safer in the locked car than out in the dark. He let him go. Hours seemed to pass like years. Every sound from the surrounding woods made her jump. Her imagination filled in the darkness with unspeakable horrors, each one worse than the last. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. God help, be there soon. Love you. Just as she started to feel a little relieved, she heard that noise again, that soft tap, tap, tapping. It seemed to be coming from above her, and she remembered the locals saying, when you hear this hook, it's already too late. Ignoring her instincts that told her to stay inside, she mustered the courage to step out of the car. With shaky hands, she used her phone's flashlight to illuminate the surrounding darkness. And then she saw it. Tree branch above the car was Mark, lifeless, his eyes still open in horror. Tapping against the roof was his swinging keychain. Screaming, Emily turned to run, but then she saw him. The hook-handed killer, standing just a few feet away, his hook glinting ominously in the dim light. The thing she heard, apart from her own screams, was the sinister sound of scraping metal against stone as the killer dragged his hook on the ground, ready to strike. The legend of the hook-handed killer lived on, leaving the town in a constant state of dread, forever haunted by the dark horrors of Shadow Lane. The Curse of the Black Ribbon. A remote village, isolated from the rest of the world by an endless forest, lived Sarah and John, a seemingly happy couple. They were deeply in love, but their relationship had one really unsettling peculiarity. Sarah always wore a black velvet ribbon around her neck, and she refused to explain why. Despite John's numerous attempts to unravel the mystery, Sarah's answer was always the same. The day you untie this ribbon will be the day we are parted forever. Please don't ask me again. Into decades, Sarah remained as beautiful and youthful as the day they first met, her beauty unmarred by time, while John grew older and wearier. Their love remained strong, but the mystery of the black ribbon weighed heavily on him. Gloomy night, as a storm raged outside, John found an ancient leather-bound book in the attic. It was a book of dark folklore and village myths. It was a tale about an enchantress who was cursed to eternal youth and isolation, bound by a black ribbon that held her soul captive. Untied it would free her, but unleash a terrible curse upon himself. A shiver ran down John's spine, but his curiosity grew stronger than his fear. He was desperate to discover the truth. Consequences be damned. At night, when Sarah was in a deep sleep, John crept up to her with trembling hands. His heart pounded as he slowly began to untie the black ribbon from around her neck. No longer the soft, gentle eyes he knew, but dark voids of malevolence. "You should have listened, John," she hissed as her skin began to crack and her face contorted into a grotesque mask. Darkened as if the very walls were absorbing light, and an unbearable, otherworldly scream erupted from Sarah's mouth. Detached gruesomely from her neck, floating in midair for a horrifying moment before disintegrating into an ashy mist. It was as if time and space folded in upon itself. John found himself alone in their home. Every trace of Sarah vanished. But he wasn't alone. Not really. Whispers filled the air, unintelligible yet menacing, making the walls seem as if they were closing in on him. Unleashed the curse. From that night on, John was never the same. He was ostracized by the villagers who knew he had done something unspeakable, though they couldn't quite remember what it was. Worst of all, every night he would hear footsteps, whispers, and sometimes even feel a cold hand grasping his throat tightly, waking him from his troubled sleep. Whenever he opened his eyes, he was alone in the darkness, left to ponder his eternal regret. In their quaint remote village, the legend of the Black Ribbon transformed into a cautionary tale, one of love, eternal youth, and a curse that could unravel the very fabric of reality itself.
And so we come to the end of our midnight campfire gathering. I hope I've added a new layer of chill to your usual s'mores and sing-alongs. If you're still with me, congratulations. You've survived. For now. But remember, the real world can offer terrors even a campfire cannot dispel. But for tonight, our tales are told, our fears faced. Until we gather again around this digital campfire, I bid you good night. But be warned, the stories you've heard may be over, but the terror, oh, the terror is just beginning. Sleep well. Or try to.